I told Kevin this town ain't big enough for the two of us, and so he's gone on vacation. But I got my guy Saul filling in, and we're going to be talking about some crazy Wild West Big 12 basketball all in 30 seconds. Stay tuned. Welcome into the AZ Wildcats podcast, live from Studio K, presented by our friends over at Circle K. This is the AZ Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Damon Fairall, with my guy Saul Bookman filling in today.
You need to hit the live like Johnny does.
Yeah, I was about to bring that up and talk about how I just don't have it in my bag to hit the live like Johnny does.
Just try it on this fine Wednesday.
You want me to?
Yeah, let's still try
Live from Studio K.
That's the energy we need.
That's the Johnny energy that he just brings on a daily basis. Have you been listening to the PHNX Cardinals show, Saul?
The PHNX Cardinals show is probably the one show, and this is no offense to anybody else, but it is the one show that I watch every single day.
Yeah, Johnny, I feel like he competes with himself based off of what yesterday's live was like, if he can up that going into the next day there. But yeah, it's a fun little game we play. I just don't have that in my bag. It's just not who I am as much. But Saul, how we living today on a Wednesday afternoon now?
I mean, we're living great, man. Listen, it's a fun time to be a Wildcat. It is as chaotic as sometimes it is. It's a fun time to be a Wildcat. I'm still waiting, however, for that that vaunted ASU basketball team to show up that we heard so much about during the college football playoff season. But, I guess it's not.
Well,
coming.
let me just stop you right there. It's a great time to be a Wildcat basketball fan. That's all I'm going to say. Wildcat basketball fan. That's what it's a great time to be. Because it's not baseball. It's not football.
It's softball.
Basketball. It's a basketball fan.
Softball.
Wait. We're 3 games into the baseball season. Calm down there, Honcho.
But I'm just saying, we're talking right now. If we're talking the present.
It's a great time to be an Arizona tennis fan. That's a fact.
Huge.
Yeah, softball fan. Softball's 10-1. What are we talking about? Let's go.
Check out my guy Saul's catnips that he's been coming out with on is it weekly basis? Where you're just kind of giving a rundown of what's going on in the athletic department. Because clearly Shane's not reading it because he's not. Clearly. I mean, he has no idea how good the tennis team is, how good the triathlon team is. I mean, Wildcats are on top, man.
I mean, they're balling. They're balling in more ways than just on the court. There's Shane.
You said you had something for me as the show started off. Was it ASU basketball?
I just wanted to dig at Shane because I was thinking about that. I was driving around town last night and unfortunately I had the local radio station on and I was able to hear about 20 minutes of the Houston ASU game and I just thought, remember all those people that were in those Big 12, message boards talking about ASU is going to dominate in basketball this year too. And it was largely because they were so hyped up off of their football stuff, which I kind of get, but at the same time, the fact that they thought that they were just going to dog walk all over the Big 12 conference and one of the toughest conferences in the country, I just thought was a little egregious and a little overreactionary. And it looks like that's kind of bearing out.
Well, I think we could start there. Houston plays ASU last night because we were just kind of going to run through what happened in the Big 12. It was a wild day in the Big 12, but probably the least wild result was ASU versus Houston, right? Where Houston really just took care of business. And then after the game, I was listening with my guy, Anthony Totri, a little bit earlier. After the game, Bobby Hurley basically just said, there's really not a world where we beat this team. That's almost if I was to summarize what he said, he basically was just listen, they're better than us. And that wasn't going to be a game that we're going to win. You don't love to hear your coach say that, but Houston is just really good, man. I was watching the first half with our ASU guys here at PHNX headquarters. And dude, they just they do things, they pull things out of their hat constantly where you're just like, how are you supposed to stop that? There's no world, like you could play perfect defense and that shot's still going to go in any day of the week. I feel like Houston is just they're so tough, and they're built to just win. They're built to win late in the season. They're built to win now. Like Kelvin Sampson has just an insane thing going over there with that program.
I mean, defensively, they just are so locked into who they are, as an identity. And that's the thing that separates Houston from just about every single other team in the country is, you have a lot of fluctuation from team to team, year to year. But the one thing that remains consistent with Kelvin Sampson's squad is that if you don't play defense, you are not seeing the court. Not in Houston, you're not. And that's the thing that stands out the most. We got to see it here, obviously in full display. And what's so funny about the game against Arizona was that even though the score was low, relatively low considering, to Arizona standards, it didn't feel like it was like this brutal, just, if you can get 2 points, you're lucky kind of game. Like it just felt like it was just a defensive battle with the shot clock running down in the last 5 seconds on every possession because both teams were locked in defensively. And it was a fun game to watch. And, listening to Tim Healy for ASU's play-by-play, the one thing that he said immediately, he was just like, watching Houston play defense is an experience because they are just so damn good. And that it is the truth. And that's why they're going to be one of the favorites to win a national title this year. They're a tough team to beat. And what I love about what Arizona is starting to embrace and what Tommy Lloyd kind of went off the rails about a little bit the other day when I asked him the question about whether or not, I was there the first time they played Houston in San Antonio. And so when I asked him a question, I basically said, like, are you happy with the trajectory of your program in relatively to physicality and defense compared to the first time you played Houston? And then he chose to use that to go on a rant of epic proportions for whatever. I almost felt like I was personally getting attacked. I was like, bro, I asked you a legit question. What are you attacking me for? You know what I mean? Like, but like, that's the identity that Arizona's starting to embrace. And honestly, going to the Big 12, it couldn't have come at a better time because one of the things that Arizona has struggled with when they have lost, especially when they've been upset, is they've relied too much on their offensive prowess instead of their defensive ability. And defense travels to every arena. You can always play D. Offense, that'll come and go sometimes. You might get cold, you might get hot, whatever. But defense always travels, and every coach in the country will tell you that. And that's why Houston is in every game that they play.
Yeah, I honestly, you brought up the fact that you asked that question of Tommy. Erica told us that when she joined our post game show, and I didn't realize the way that you kind of framed the question. But we just had Testy Tommy up there on Saturday. Man, he was coming at people's necks. Yeah, he did he point at you specifically when he said that you guys think that we're gonna get our ass kicked versus Baylor?
As soon as he said that, I was like shaking my head, like, what are you talking about? What are you putting me in this category for, man? Yeah. I've never doubted you guys all season. What's the problem here?
It seems like the way you teed up the question was like kind of to get a positive answer. Like, yeah, I think we're really moving in the right direction. You look at that Houston game and got our ass kicked the first time around. This time it was, we played them at their own game and it came down to the wire. And that's the truth, right? Like, This is clearly a much more defensive oriented team than past Tommy Lloyd teams have been. I did yesterday's show, Saul, on like kind of the poor shooting of this season. And I think that in large part that's due to the emphasis on finding defensive profiles rather than having offensive profiles and from a recruiting standpoint. And yeah, there's a little bit more of a balance that needs to be had. Your backcourt that plays, all 30 minutes a game they can't be shooting a combined like 27% from three like KJ Lewis, Caleb Love, and Jaden Bradley are. But those three guys are also keeping you in games with how high level their defense is. So it is a little bit of a kind of a pendulum there that you have to find the right balance of. And, I think Houston is a good example of having that right balance because they're not one of the, on paper, like points per game wise, they're not putting up like some of the most points in the country, but offensive efficiency wise, according to KenPom, they're a top 10 offensive team in the country, just with an extremely slow pace. So,
you look at 9.1% from three on the year. Like they're a good squad.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You look at like an LJ Cryer. I mean, the guy's unbelievable, right? Like he consistently is just hitting tough shots after tough shot. Same with Milos Uzan. Both those guys are just big time tough shot makers. And honestly, like I look at a team like that and I think, as the season gets late on in March, like a good defense mixed with guards that can hit tough shots, that's the recipe for success. But definitely want to, move on a little bit from the Houston ASU side of things and talk a little bit more about some of the other, scores that happened here in the Big 12. Another big time score that happened that was, maybe somewhat of the story of the day, I would say, and here are the scores right here. You got, it's not on this screen, but TCU upsets Texas Tech.
Yeah, that's the biggest one of
that U of A and Baylor logo didn't get switched. Hold on, I'll fix that.
All good.
That was that game.
Yeah. The
66-69.
The biggest upset of the day.
Texas Tech.
Good job, Shane.
Saul, I don't need that from you right now.
Having worn the producer hat many times and made many of mistakes on graphics, I will refrain from throwing my stones at the glass house over here.
You also know that like it stinks when like the host is the one to blame too because they didn't give enough leeway. Like, it's just like it's really unfortunate.
Whoa.
Wow.
I was defending my guy here, and then it's just
typical.
Yeah,
Sun
no, you know what?
Shane,
screw you, man. Idiot.
Yeah. That was a big win for TCU, and again, I tweeted that last night. Like, there is no easy game in the Big 12. I don't care what team you're playing or what you think you're about to get. Like, any team can beat any team, and the fact that a lot of people complain about Arizona not dominating some of these games or not winning by 20 or maybe just winning ugly. Like, who gives a dang? Like, they win, right?
Yeah.
That's all that matters. Like, you go to K-State. It's a tough game. You better realize that it's a tough game. And I know a lot of the casuals out there might be like, oh, but you should never lose to K-State. Bro, stop. Like, Iowa State, Kansas, Arizona, all lost to K-State. Like, TCU beats Texas Tech. Like, Texas Tech was right there tied with Arizona in the conference standings. And now they're one game behind. And, it's not going to be an easy road no matter what you think you have on paper. Arizona against BYU. They already beat BYU up in Provo. That doesn't mean that this Saturday is going to be any easier. Like, you still got to ball out. You still got to show up. And like, that's why you got to give Arizona a lot of credit for how they've handled this season so far, because they could easily be an 8-6 team or, 7-7, but they're 11-3. So you move on.
Well, I think it's an interesting talking point because before the season, or before the conference season, I should say, Arizona was a middling kind of 500 about team. And it begged the question, if Arizona does struggle a little bit in conference with, the just kind of the night in, night out grind of the Big 12, is that enough to make the tournament? But Arizona, to their credit, as you mentioned, has really handled business versus a lot of those teams that they probably should handle business against, but it's not as if every team is doing that, right? It's not like there is a Kansas State loss here and there. There is a TCU loss for a Texas Tech team here and there. But I would say that like I'm comfortable with Arizona losing games to decent teams in the Big 12 because I know how difficult this conference is, as long as they're not happening at home, right? Like I know Houston was a home game. I'm fine with that. It was a tough game, went down to the wire. Houston's probably the best team in the conference. The rest of the teams, like, I just want to protect home court advantage. Losing to a K-State on the road, like, that doesn't bother me as much. I think I even predicted that going into this conference season because I know how tough Manhattan is. Like,
and they were legitimately like the hottest team in the country.
Yeah, at the time, and now they stink again, which is unfortunate.
Here's the fixed graphics from Big Dummy Boy.
Yeah, so there you go. You got Arizona beating Baylor, of course, on Monday night by 7 points, which is a huge win in a really tough environment. Iowa State handles business versus Colorado. Shane, I don't know if you got in on this. Colorado's second half money line probably had some juice on it. Colorado takes down Iowa State second half.
Do you remember your lock of the century yesterday, though?
What was the lock of the century?
ASU first half money line.
Yeah, well, if it makes you feel better, I actually bet on Houston first half money line. As I thought about it, I was like, what are we talking about? But yeah, BYU, I think this is the one that is super eye-opening. Kansas State obviously loses to Utah, which is not a good loss for them. But BYU beats Kansas at home by 34 points. And Arizona obviously has BYU on the horizon there. I'm sure they're feeling pretty good after a big-time win like that. I think it begs some questions about Kansas and how good they are. But Saul, I guess just kind of after looking at that, like, where are you at on BYU? Going into this matchup on Saturday.
Like I'm excited, but real quick, I do want to touch on Kansas for a second. So, obviously Bill Self has got a lot of credibility. His resume speaks for itself, so it's not in the same category. But we remember last week when Bobby Hurley, said that basically his players were not trying to hear what he was trying to say after the game, right? Well, Bill Self yesterday, he just says, and I quote, "We need to get away from each other. I'll tell you that point blank." After the game, like nothing is going right in Kansas right now. Arizona was a preseason top 10. Top 10 in the polls, and then they fall out of the polls, and now they're back in the polls. Kansas was the top ranked team in the country, and now they're about to fall out of the top 25 completely after this loss. So they've got a lot of soul searching to do out there in Jayhawk land. And listen, a game that we thought was going to be tough, brutal, and I still think it will be to wrap up the season for Arizona when they go to Lawrence, is now looking more gettable at this point. But again, you just never know, especially the last game of the season at Fog, and it's Arizona. Like, they're going to be ready for that game. I'm not saying they won't, but Kansas has got a lot of things that they got to figure out after getting swept in Utah this past week.
Do you think it's somewhat of a Hunter Dickinson problem? Because at Michigan, they were like a top 10 preseason team as well. He has all this hype. He has a big name. He puts up great stats, but like, is he contributing to?
He's the worst good player ever.
Is he contributing to winning? Actually, that's kind of my question, I guess, because is it or are they empty stats more so?
I wouldn't say they're empty stats. I think he's a valuable player for them, but I just don't think that he's the type of player that's going to be able to overtake a game. And he's not that kind of elite level athlete or player. Like, he's a really, really good player.
Yeah.
He's one of the better players in the country. Don't get me wrong, but I just don't. He's not like a top tier NBA pick. He's not he's not an uber athlete. He's not a phenomenal player. He's just a really good player.
Which isn't good if you can't take over a game as a dominant 7-footer.
When you're 30 years old.
That's not a good thing.
At 30, and you're in the prime of your NBA career, if hypothetically.
He's got the stiffest hips in the country. Those hips definitely lie.
I think the athleticism point that you make, I think, is kind of his issue, right? Because I think it's a defensive problem. He can give you what you need on offense, but defensively he's giving it right back. And I that was somewhat of an issue I had with like an Umar Ballo when he was at Arizona, and it was to a lesser extent. I didn't think Ballo was like an abysmal defender, but he just didn't have the mobility that you would covet maybe necessarily out of like a rim protector, like you see out of Christian Coloco or even the bigs that we have on this current team. He was a little bit less mobile, and I thought that it led to some easy buckets for the other team. And it's hard to win when your defensive anchor, your center, is like somewhat immobile and not, really a defensive presence.
I thought Ballo got a little bit better towards, the end of last season, or just last season in general, and guarding the perimeter. Still not elite and still not great, but he was serviceable. I will say that, right? And you're right. This year, especially with losing Krivas, getting Vasar and Carter Bryant and Awaka to be able to guard the perimeter. And remember, at the beginning of this season, we thought Awaka was going to be torched on the perimeter. We did not think that he was going to be good enough to be able to hold up against the switches and the matchups against elite talent. But he has held up as well. And I think he's done an admirable job on the perimeter and being able to play, the hedge and recover defense that you need to play at this level. And so with Awaka, Vasar, and where Arizona's positioned, I think 1 through 5, they can match up with just about anybody in the country. We've seen that already plenty of times. Even the other night, Jaden Bradley and Caleb Love found themselves on mismatches with O'Weir down low, And they were able to hold up at the point of attack enough for the bigs to be able to recover on switches for them to get back out on the perimeter and not let Baylor take advantage of those mismatches. Omir. And so you got to like where Arizona's at defensively all the way around. And the teams that are struggling right now, they're too inconsistent on both sides of the ball. That's why Kansas has been falling apart. They can't find the juice right now, and they're struggling to try and find the juice. They need the juice. Texas Tech, like last night, if you look statistically, that game was basically even outside of one specific category, and that was free throws. TCU forced their will at the rim, and Texas Tech paid the price for it.
Yeah. You mentioned Toby Awaka, like kind of preseason, we were not thinking that he had that mobility. Preseason, we didn't really even think Henry Vasar was going to be in the rotation that much. Yeah. So, it's been a somewhat of a revelation from both of the big men on this team that, that they've, become what they have. And Toby Awaka further, like not even defensively, like he's a much better offensive player than I could have ever imagined, especially after non-conference play. Seems like in conference play, he's kind of hit that new gear from like a post scoring standpoint as well. So, everything that these bigs kind of bring to the table, like I think is a little bit of a cherry on top because, you didn't have a whole lot of expectations, I think for both of those guys, but they've really, really kind of outperformed where at least where I personally had them going into this year.
Yeah, Toby Awaka has, I thought at the beginning of the season he might be a little bit of a liability on offense. And now he's almost a go-to player. Well, like when the ball is in his hands offensively, I am confident that he's going to be able to get a good shot or a good attempt. And even if he misses, I'm confident that he can get his own rebound and put it back in. You know what I'm saying?
Like
he's just so strong and so big. Like his development. I mean, listen, this is where you got to give Tommy so much credit. The development of those two specific players only in Vasar and Awaka, and how they have completely gotten away from what we thought they were going to be at the beginning of the season versus what they are now is a testament to the program completely. Like their development is second to none when it comes to these two players. If just isolated, like they have been phenomenal. Vasar, a lot of people just giving Fran a bunch of crap for whatever reason, but like he's on the money when he says that Vasar easily could be an NBA draft pick next year if he stays and works at this because of his development this year. You don't think scouts weren't putting his name on like as a must watch in the future tab, on the side with Vasar? 1,000,000%. You don't find bigs that can do what he does. And if he improves his shooting from the perimeter, that's it. That's a wrap. He's going to be a top 20 pick next year if he improves that side because the athleticism is there. The defense is there. And I've loved his development alone. It's just been fantastic.
I said it to Reggie Gear yesterday, and I've talked about it really all season. I think Henry Vasar, for me personally, has been the most fun thing to watch, fun player to watch. Like just his development, him putting it on people's heads like he seemingly does every game. The way he like attacks blocking shots as well, I think is, he has a kind of somewhat of a tenacity and like he's very physical. Like he almost like wants the contact, right? Mm-hmm. But to your point earlier, Fran Fraschilla made the mistake of not talking about Arizona for 40 straight minutes, and that bothered some people. Our guy Fran, he did. I did not at one point think to myself, oh my God, he's talking way too much about VJ Edgecombe, top 10 pick in the NBA draft in the future. Like that's crazy to me. But
I mean, I saw some of the scuttle on social media about it, but I didn't even think about it at all. I didn't think about any of the commentary. I thought it was, it was just objectively speaking, like I was fine with it. And listen, like we weren't stopping Edgecombe. Like there was nothing we were doing to stop him. Like I'm like, bro, throw a double at him or something. Get the ball out of his hands because he was not stoppable at all in that game.
Especially late in that game. Like, and it was a mixture of he's the leading scorer and he has the highest draft profile on the floor. It's like, that guy's going to be talked about a little bit, I think.
If Carter Bryant was doing the same thing, Fran would have said the same thing.
Yeah. And Carter Bryant had I think he showed some stuff in that game as well. And I think that, a lot of the scouts there, I'm sure, were there to watch a mixture of Carter Bryant and VJ Edgecombe with a little bit of Robert Wright and Henry Vasar sprinkled in as well. So, yeah, there were some future NBA players on that court on Saturday. So yeah, I mean, real quick, Saul, I know you got to get out of here, but just kind of final thoughts on BYU. I know that we didn't really touch on it too much, but they destroyed Kansas yesterday. Did you just final thoughts on BYU for you?
Listen, BYU is a really good team. The reason why they can be considered elite is just because they can shoot the ball at a high clip, especially from three. And anytime you face a team like that, you've got to be on your toes and be ready to go. And that's why, like when we play BYU on Saturday, like Arizona on the perimeter, it better be locked in because you don't want to get caught, looking. And Arizona has shored that up quite a bit over the course of the season compared to the early part. So I'm excited. We're going to talk about that tonight on McHale Madness. We're also going to talk about Tommy Lloyd's comments regarding, the development of the program based off of my question. And it's going to be fun. So join Corey and I tonight, 7 o'clock, McHale Madness, all hoops all the time, baby.
Yep, 7 o'clock. You're going to tune in for McHale Madness. To your point, Saul, BYU is the 15th ranked three-point attempt team in the country. They also give up a ton of threes per game. So I'm sure they're going to try to get Arizona into that trap that we've seen teams try to get Arizona into this season where, Arizona's not a great shooting team, but they're just chucking up a ton of threes. It's not exactly the ideal game plan for this team. But Saul, we'll get you out of here on that. You gotta hit some things, attend to some business. And make sure you guys tune in for McHale Madness at 7 p.m. tomorrow. And Saul will be back on Friday and Saturday for our preview show for BYU and our post-game show for the BYU game. Saul, thanks for tuning in today and helping us out here.
Anytime, brother. Appreciate you.
All right, let's go into some ads here, Shane.
I'm gonna make you do that again.
Okay. We just previewed all of the Big 12 and went through what happened in the out-of-town scoreboard, but I guess I don't really know what you want from me here.
We'll be right back on the AZ Wildcats podcast.
We'll be right back. And of course, we got to talk about our friends over at Branded Bills. We headed out to the Branded Bills facility. They gave us a tour. They're just our friends at this point, Shane. That's the way I choose to look at it. I love our people over at Branded Bills. We hung out with them as well for our ASU U of A takeover. They came out to our little pregame party at Postino, and they're just good folks over there at Branded Bills. Reminded me a lot of the people in this office, honestly, just a creative group of people getting together and just kind of accomplishing a goal of something that they love at the end of the day. And that's making premium headwear and apparel for all of you guys. It's an Arizona company. We love supporting local, and their facilities out there in Mesa that we went and checked out. Just an unbelievable facility, making all their custom hats out there. And if you need some custom apparel, head on over to brandedbills.com and use our promo code PHNX. You'll get 20% off that first order, whether it's a snapback, trucker fitteds, beanies, or t-shirts. Branded Bills has you covered with performance and style. And guess what, guys? They got some new products that are on the horizon here. They showed us some of those new products. Unbelievable. Wanted my hands on all of them, especially, a little bit of something with a hood of sorts, Shane. Something to stay tuned for. I am a connoisseur, they may say, but they have their campus collection of. If you go to the McHale bookstore, the main bookstore at the Student Union in Tucson, they got a whole Branded Bills little setup there of the Branded Bills specific hats that are U of A related, and let me tell you, they're beautiful. Me and Kevin were jealous. Kevin went down there to Tucson, went to the bookstore, sent me a couple. Head on over to brandedbills.com and use code PHNX for 20% off that first order. And support our friends over at Branded Bills. Also support the Phoenix Raceway. They got a race going on March 7th through 9th. We went out last year to Phoenix Raceway and just had a grand old time out there. The vibes incredible, but it will be hot. So make sure you bring some sunscreen, maybe long sleeve if you want to protect those arms a little bit. But Phoenix Raceway out there in the Estrella Mountains, like I said, March 7th through 9th. Join all the stars out there and battle it out for the Shriners Children's 500. There's going to be 40 drivers, all the big dogs, Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, Bubba Wallace, and of course, Joey Logano. It's a best-in-class fan experience. The whole family won't forget. Like I said, just great vibes out there at Phoenix Raceway. Just a good time. If you want to go hang out with your friends, that's a great place to go. Get an RV maybe. It's that kind of vibe. Get your tickets now at phoenixraceway.com. Well, we talked a lot of Big 12 basketball. Got a little bit more basketball talk to get on here. And I want to talk about BYU a little bit because we didn't hit on BYU a whole lot, but BYU is one of the better offensive teams in the country, and they do so by just kind of spamming three-pointers. They're a heavy perimeter-based team. They really hone in on shooting threes, and it's kind of the evolution of modern basketball where it's turned into somewhat of this like 3 is greater than 2 mentality, which is, mathematically the truth. And it does lead to winning a little bit more when you're, an efficient 3-point shooting team. From an effective field goal percentage, BYU is the 9th ranked team in the entire country, which is, out of 364, 9th is pretty good. That'll be something that Arizona's going to have to focus on going into this next game. I think at times this season, Arizona has really felt like, they struggle with like a particular 3-point shooter. Maybe it's not, the collective. Maybe it's not the whole team is just going crazy, hitting shots left and right. But there's guys here and there that just give Arizona problems and that they can't slow down, right? So you look at a BYU team and they got a lot of guys that can shoot threes. Who could potentially be that guy for BYU in this game? It's interesting. It really is something that I think Arizona is going to have to try to improve. You look here, you got Richie Saunders. He's their leading scorer this season at 15 points per game, shooting 43% from 3-point land. You got Trevin Nell, who had a really, really big game against Kansas last night. 15 points. I think he had like 7 or 8 boards and assists in that one as well. He's shooting 43% on the year for BYU. This is a team that obviously their mentality and their coaching is led to them shooting just tons of 3-pointers at crazy volume. Arizona, not a volume 3-point shooting team necessarily, but also not like a great 3-point shooting team. So it'll be somewhat of a battle of different types of profiles there. Obviously, Arizona already played BYU on the road in a crazy environment. Provo, almost 20,000 people in the stands, and it was sold out in that arena. But Toby Awaka kind of took over in that game, and I think that might be another matchup to exploit this time around is Arizona's big men versus BYU's big men. We saw it against a team like Baylor, who doesn't play a true center, and Arizona was really able to take advantage of that matchup. Now you got a guy like Traore on BYU, and he's averaging 5.5 rebounds a game, playing 18 minutes a game, but it's not really that's not the way that they're trying to play basketball, right? They're not a team that's going to kill you with height and just length in general. They're more of somewhat of a shooting team. They do have big guards though, and that's something that Arizona will have to take into account because while Jaden Bradley, Caleb Love, KJ Lewis can defend a little bit above their size, they're not guys that are typically defending against 6'5", 6'6" guards on a regular basis. So yeah, I think this is a matchup for Arizona that is not necessarily the best matchup on paper, but it did work out in Arizona's favor on the first reverse fixture of this one. Gonna be an interesting little competition there. And BYU is really, I think, one of the more underrated teams in the Big 12 conference, right? You look at the Big 12 standings, and I'm pretty sure they have a better record than Kansas now, who Saul mentioned, is the preseason number 1 team in the top 25 poll. I'm just looking at this here. BYU 9-6 in the Big 12, Kansas 8-7 now. BYU, the highest unranked team in the Big 12. I expect that to change after handling Kansas the way they did. You got Houston at 14-1, the 5th team in the country. Arizona, 19th team in the country at 12-3. Iowa State, the 8th ranked team in the country at 11-4, tied with Texas Tech, the 9th ranked team at 11-4. And then you got BYU unranked at 9-6 and Kansas 23rd overall at 8-7. So yeah, I expect BYU to kind of find their way into that back end of the ranking there. I'd be interested to see if I did look at the AP Top 25 poll, how many votes did they receive last week? Because I'm sure that they received a couple here, or at least they should have, because if they didn't, blasphemous. Yeah, no votes for BYU here on the others receiving votes on the Top 25 poll. I wonder what that is, because I do think that as hard as the Big 12 is from a top to bottom standpoint, and I think everybody knew going into the season that the Big 12 was potentially going to be the best basketball conference in the country. The SEC may have that crown right now, but for my money, I still think that I would take the Big 12 over the SEC, top to bottom. That being said, I feel like the teams that are, like a Baylor, like a BYU, who are really good teams, but they're about 500 in conference, they're somewhat, I don't know, like kind of stifled by the fact that, that they're losing like not 6 of their 15 games in the case of BYU, losing 7 of their 15 games in the case of a Baylor. And, they have good overall records, but it's not leading to, the national respect necessarily. It's a little bit reminiscent to me of the Pac-12 in football, I would say, rather not the Pac-12 in basketball, because I don't have a ton of respect for Pac-12 basketball in general and how it went down. But I always felt that in Pac-12 football, at least, it was somewhat of a cannibalization of top to bottom decent teams, even though some of the lower tier teams in the Pac-12, any given Saturday, they would beat an Oregon, they would beat a USC, right? And, the cannibalization factor there, I think, really hurt Arizona and the other teams in the conference from a national standpoint and just from a ranking standpoint. I think we're seeing that a little bit here in the Big 12 with those teams like BYU, with Baylor, who, for my money, are really good teams that I think could make deep tournament runs late in March, but, just have taken a couple too many losses here against, some solid squads. Lost Highway in the chat says here, what's with the weirdos from other fan bases infiltrating? I've never considered it. We welcome all of our fan bases here. We got a Houston fan in the chat here, Nav. Unfortunately, we won't talk about Houston because we did that at the top of the show, and I think that was enough Houston talk for one episode that has nothing to do with Houston at all. But we appreciate you being here, sir. Make sure you guys all drop a like on this video. Show some support. I know Kevin's on vacation, but he's still texting me about those like numbers saying, this is supposed to be a vacation. I'm supposed to be getting rest. Am I going to be able to get sleep if we don't hit our like goal, our 50 like goal that we set for every episode? I don't know. Rome, how we living, buddy? How we living?
I'm feeling pretty good today.
Are you unmuted? We got our intern Rome pressing.
What's
some
going on,
buttons
everybody?
here.
How we doing?
Give him some shine on the show. Everybody give Rome a like. Throw Rome a like. Get in the chat. And yeah, I this has been a good episode in terms of just Big 12 talk. Just kind of setting the stage for the upcoming week and Arizona's big game against BYU on Saturday at McKale Center. We're going to talk about some baseball and some softball and just kind of how this season has played out. And we're going to do that here on the AZ Wildcats podcast. But first, it's time to talk about our friends over at Colt Cannabis and True Leave. My guy Kevin is all over the Colt Cannabis and True Leave because it's truly, and not True Leave, but truly the best cannabis that you could find anywhere in the great state of Arizona. Colt is actually a Tucson company. I don't know if y'all knew that, but kind of a big deal. And there's a reason that it's the best weed that you can find anywhere. It's because it's made in the greatest city on earth, right? And they, of course, have their new True Leave exclusive magic marker, True Leave being the biggest dispensary in the great state of Arizona. You probably have a True Leave somewhat close to you. And make sure you guys check out that magic marker. The Valley has been asking for, Tucson has been asking for, and now she's back. Visit trueleave.com to find the local shop near you or place an order and tell them PHNX sent you. Tell them Damon Dog and the great Kevo Post sent you. And that name holds a little bit of weight in that True Leave. Great flower is hard to find these days. We all know that. Luckily, our friends at Colt Cannabis have been dropping some absolute fire here at PHNX Studios. And let me tell you, it is fire because it is potent. It is in the bags. It's in the cans. It's still potent. A new True Leave location opened up in Maricopa on January 11th. Go check that guy out and get over to trueleave.com to find your local shop or place an order and tell them that PHNX sent you. We also got to talk about our friends over at Circle K. Love our friends over at Circle K. Circle K is America's thirst stop. And of course, the reason that it's America's thirst stop is because it's the best place to stop and get any sort of product when it comes to, energy drinks, nicotine products, alcohol. I mean, the Inner Circle Rewards literally has it all. I am an Inner Circle member. I am a premium member of the Inner Circle, and that means I get 5 cents off per gallon every time I fill up at the gas tank. It's so easy to fill up. You can sign up at the gas tank. You can just download the app, sign up on your phone right now, and you'll get 25 cents off per gallon on your first 5 fill-ups, 3 cents off per gallon after that, and 5 cents off once you become a premium member. There's member exclusive deals and discounts that you don't want to miss out on with your favorite snacks, drinks, all of the above. Thirst, meet your match. Join Inner Circle for free by downloading the Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit circlek.com for details. We are, of course, in Studio K, presented by our friends over at Circle K. And you know what, Shane? I was totally like in my own mode here. I was thinking when I set up the show, right? Because we obviously have these lovely portraits behind us of things.
Oh, no.
When I set up the show,
I'll do it. I'll change it for you.
I was under the impression that for some reason, because I set up Cardinals, I set up Bo with a one shot in the studio every day. Mm-hmm. And all you can see is the one directly behind me. I didn't think about how I was going to be on this expanded shot, uncropped later. And we have PHNX friend of the program.
Well, you're not supporting the Sun Devils. You're just supporting PHNX.
I am.
Think about it like that.
Yeah, Cam Scadaboo is a good dude, and he's come in here before, and we like Cam. But yeah, not exactly ideal here on the AZ Wildcats podcast, and we'll get Shane to switch that guy out for us here. This is elite podcasting, Shane. That's what it's all about. We go with the flow. And now you see the great hold the line man from the Arizona Wildcats PHNX Cardinals watch party that we had for the NFL draft. Make sure you guys check out our events tab at gophnx.com. We got all sorts of events going on at all times. If you're a Valley resident, a Tucson resident, you're going to want to make sure that you check those out and get in on some of those events, because let me tell you, that draft event was so much fun. And I'm going to be going ballistic this year. I was ballistic last year when the Cardinals drafted Marvin Harrison Jr. Because that's what we were holding the line for. Going to be ballistic this year when T-Mac gets his name called, regardless of what team he goes to.
Yeah, I mean, T-Mac's probably one of the top receivers in the draft this year. I mean, we'll see what he can get. But, he's obviously going to be a top 10 pick in the draft. So that'll make any Wildcat fan happy in that case. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm pumped for T-Mac, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun going into, this draft process here. But something interesting about that, just a quick note, we did and I'll actually, you know what, Rome, I'll send it to you here. I'll send it to the production account, and you can pop it up on screen. We did we were looking at Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft yesterday. Daniel Jeremiah, obviously one of the top draft experts. And he came out with his mock draft 2.0 yesterday. And just a little interesting note, at least what I thought was interesting, didn't have T-Mac here in his top 16. We only stopped it here at the Cardinals pick. But yeah, no T-Mac here in the top 16 of the draft. Kind of crazy. Yeah, you're good, Rome. It's you could see here on the screen, no wide receivers in general. I mean, you could count Travis Hunter, I guess, as one, but I think that he kind of goes in his own category of athlete / utility player / I think he'll probably play more cornerback at the next level. But yeah, no T-Mac here in the top 16. I would be pretty shocked if that's the case, to be honest with you. When was the last draft where the number one wide receiver didn't go in the top half of the draft. I think you'd probably have to go back to like a time in football where the running back was more important than the wide receiver position.
I can look for you.
Yeah.
The era of the NFL with like the offense being so like it's almost like the wide receiver one's almost like a quarterback now. Like you almost have to have one, unless you have Patrick Mahomes. They're so valuable. Like again, we talked about this yesterday. I would be shocked if he's not top 8. Because what would you say the Patriots have 8?
They have 4.
4.
I think that's 4 is his absolute ceiling, and I'd say like maybe and maybe this is just like kind of a weird Damon bias, but I really do think that like there's no chance that like he would get past the Dolphins at 13. It's like you look at the Dolphins last year, they have all their receivers are under 6 feet tall. None of them win at the catch point. Like the Dolphins were screaming out for a T-Mac contested catch style receiver, and Tyreek Hill might be on the out. So I can't see him moving past that spot. But I also look at a team like the Saints at 9. Like the Saints, I think are going to be really in on T-Mac here. The Jets, I mean, Daniel Jeremiah in that draft has the Jets taking Tyler Warren, a tight end, here at 7, which that would be a crazy pick for a team that is in need of a quarterback, maybe needs a little bit more offensive weaponry. And I think Tyler Warren's a great player. I personally, I would want Tyler Warren on my team, but I just think picking a tight end, the first tight end before the first receiver is a little bit crazy in modern NFL. But
and I feel like if anything, going back to T-Mac, right? You want that type of size for an NFL roster. You don't get that type of size that often with any receiver.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, I think that probably should have been kind of sought after with different NFL scouts, but I don't know, maybe they see something different.
Yeah, I mean, T-Mac's probably going to measure in at about 6'4", 6'5", probably jump around 40-inch vertical, which will be, one of the best in his class. And Shane, we talked about the other day on the podcast. How about those mittens that guy has on him? I think, that hand size going to be a big factor there. Daniel Jeremiah has, and this is actually interesting, this fit that he has for him. Daniel Jeremiah has T-Mac going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. His number one pro comparison, I think, to this point that I've seen the most is probably Mike Evans.
Yeah, I was going to say Mike Evans 2.0, possibly. Yeah. I don't know, maybe.
So potentially you're looking at a somewhat of a handing of the baton in Tampa Bay, where Mike Evans somewhat, grooms T-Mac for that role of being, the next great contested catch receiver in the NFL. That would really be an interesting pairing there. And Chris Godwin is a free agent, so the Bucs hypothetically could use a receiver. Lost Highway saying, been seeing some negative reviews here on T-Mac, which is interesting because, I think you talk to Arizona fans, we don't really have anything negative to say about T-Mac whatsoever from not only from a personality standpoint and whatnot, but also just from a playing on the field aspect. Like the guy did almost everything that was asked of him throughout his entire career, was always the number one target, still found ways to beat his man, still found ways to get big catches. The one thing I would say is I remember in that Texas Tech game, he did fumble in a big spot there, which was a momentous occasion for Arizona's season. Could have been 4-1 after that Texas Tech game, and he kind of fumbled it away. So that was a mistake, but everybody makes mistakes from time to time. You can't hold like a one play against a guy when he was, for his career, like, one of the greatest Arizona football players of all time.
Right. And I feel like especially with that NFL draft process, you want to look at guys like from a broad perspective and not just kind of pinpoint on one thing. I mean, a lot of NFL scouts probably do that anyway. But if you want to look at a full player, you want to try and see what they can bring to the table on a full scale. So maybe they see something different. Again, I don't know. It's kind of a weird situation there with T-Mac. I would think he'd easily be in the top 10 just based off of, again, that size and that catch radius that he has.
Yeah. You would think so. But, obviously not the case as of right now. Erica mentions it here in the chat. If you can scroll up a tiny bit, she says, did you know that the women play BYU today? Yeah, the women's team does match up against BYU today at 6 p.m. And it is at McHale Center. So we, of course, know that our girl, Erica Day, she's going to be having all the coverage. Make sure you guys lock in on her account, Erica Lee Day on Twitter. She will be, of course, providing you with all the best Arizona women's basketball coverage, as well as being at the men's basketball games and providing us with some great post-game sound from Tommy Lloyd and just thoughts after every game. But yeah, BYU 13-12 overall, 4-10 in conference. The Wildcats now sitting at 6-8 in conference after clawing their way back to 500 and then losing 2 straight to Oklahoma State and TCU. Obviously, a really, really good TCU team. Don't know too much about Oklahoma State, but yeah, they're ranked. They're 24th in the country, 21-5 overall. So also somewhat of a acceptable loss, I would say. Got to win this one though. Got to take care of business against a BYU team that's sitting at 12th in the Big 12. So yeah, make sure you lock in on our PHNX_Wildcats account. Erica will be tweeting from there as well for the game, and her account, Erica Lee Day, as I already mentioned. We got to talk about a little bit of baseball and softball. Those seasons have now commenced, and yeah, we got some some updates for you there. Let's start off with the negative. Why don't we? Arizona baseball went into this season, was preseason ranked. Was one of the, I believe, the 2 or 3 teams in the Big 12 that was ranked in the preseason AP Top 25 poll. Baseball is a little bit of a weird sport, somewhat like basketball, but I'd say even more so, where the U.S. They're the UC Santa Barbaras of the world, the UC Fullertons of the world, or Cal State Fullerton, I should say. University of San Diego, like some of these smaller schools, if they're in hubs where there's talent pools, they can be really, really elite level teams. Dallas Baptist is another one, DBU, where it's like these schools are not nationally prominent schools, but it's easier to formulate a baseball team and get a good baseball team together at some of those schools than it would be, a good football team or a good basketball team that is nationally relevant. So yeah, while maybe I say 2 or 3 Big 12 teams in the preseason poll, that sounds like a small amount. It's a little different than some of the other sports. But Arizona was in the preseason AP Top 25, and they drop out after 3 straight losses to start this season. All neutral site losses, all to good programs. But you never want to see your team go 0-3 to start there. With a 2-1 loss to Ole Miss to start the season, just couldn't get the bats going. Then a 16-5 loss to Clemson, who is ranked, by the way, and is a very good team. But 16-5, that's not a spot you want to be in. And then they get out to a 1-0 lead versus Louisville, proceeding to lose 13-1 to Louisville. So that's how the Arizona Wildcats start off the season 0-3. Not exactly ideal. They bounce back with a 10-0 run rule victory against New Mexico in the next game, move on to 1-3, and now are gearing up for a big series against University of San Diego, who I mentioned earlier in the show. But they're not necessarily having the greatest year. 0-4 right now, USD. But to be fair to them, they did play number 22 TCU in those 4 games and got swept by TCU. So yeah, Arizona's going to need to take care of business against a USD team that should hypothetically a back end of the top 25 ranked team should handle business with, as we see with TCU. I think that obviously jury's not out on Arizona. This is still so early in the season. It's baseball, things happen, but cause for concern for sure. You don't want to be losing to all the kind of the top tier teams that you play, because that's going to cost you late when you're trying to make a tournament run or you're trying to even make the tournament. But as we've seen with Chip Hale teams in the past, I think that second half of the season is where you start to see the team peak a little bit more. Hopefully that Chip Hale and the Wildcats can kind of do that this time around as well. But yeah, we'll be locked in on baseball and monitoring that a little bit more. Like I said, only 4 games into the season, so going to be hard to judge too harshly going into this one. Let's talk about now a little bit more of the positive, and I think that this is where Arizona fans can be a little bit more locked in, right? And that's with the softball team. The Arizona Wildcats softball team is off to a flaming hot start, 10-1 right now, and 10th overall in the country, according to D1 Softball, 9th overall in the country, according to Softball America. That's right where we want to be, man. Arizona softball, it's been a little bit of a kind of a slower run in the last decade or so. Some women's college World Series appearances, no doubt about it. But we haven't seen the heights that we were have become accustomed to as Arizona fans with this softball program, right? Arizona softball on paper, one of the probably 3 best softball programs in the country. I'd put UCLA and Oklahoma a couple notches ahead of Arizona as of now. But Arizona is just below that group, right? And there's no reason that Arizona shouldn't be recruiting at the highest level in softball, shouldn't be performing at the highest level in softball. You got Caitlin Lowe now, and I believe this is like her 4th or 5th season at this point. And it seems like that this team might be her best team going into this one. It's gonna be a fun season to watch. I think you run rule number 11, Bama. We've seen it with the SEC teams just kind of being a different level, one step ahead of the rest of the country when it comes to softball. So that's an encouraging win, right? You take care of a number 11 Alabama and kind of just manhandle them, right? Or should I say woman handle?
Yeah, we gotta make sure we get that right. But yeah, I think with the softball thing, let me ask you a question though.
I'd love a question.
Do you think that U of A is the best softball team in the state? Because if we're talking all 3 teams, ASU, GCU, and U of A, I got a chance to broadcast ASU and GCU's game last night. GCU's 10-2 on the year, ASU 7-4. Both teams coming off of great invitational classics that they co-hosted with Littlewood Classic. I understand that Arizona may be a step behind, but maybe we'll see if they can try and get something going in the near future.
Yeah, I think GCU is a team that has kind of become a prominent, I would say, staple of the women's softball tournament. They make it fairly often at this point. I obviously they're in a smaller conference, but it's not easy to get those automatic bids winning the conference and whatnot. And I remember a couple years ago, I think it was like a GCU, maybe like a Kentucky game or something where they were able to kind of knock down Kentucky in the NCAA tournament. I think GCU softball is a program that I have a lot of respect for as well. They beat ASU.
Yeah, they beat ASU last night when I called that game. I mean, GCU again, back-to-back conference championships. They're looking for 4 straight. So yeah, they're trying to get back to the tournament. So it's going to be tough to try and figure that out as they go.
This is a really solid program, no doubt about that. I do think Arizona is the best of the 3 in the state, but it is a strong trio of softball teams, as of right now, and GCU is really, really locked in on those diamond sports, right? They're good at baseball, they're good at softball. They've put a lot of emphasis in that, and I think Arizona's the best state in the country when it comes to being a baseball softball state, just because the weather is so solid all the year round, right?
Yeah.
And so Arizona State softball, maybe they're a little bit of a step behind. I think they have a ranked win versus Cal this year, ranked win versus Oregon this year, ranked win versus Washington this year, who Arizona also beat. So, I think you do have to show some respect here to ASU and their softball program. Going to be interesting. And I think, they certainly have the ability to, make some noise here, especially with number 3 Florida on the horizon.
Right.
But yeah, I would say that Arizona, I do believe, is the strongest of the trio, but that's obviously liable to change. It's very early in the season. Arizona plays number 20 Stanford tomorrow. So we'll find out a little bit more about are they competing with some of the top teams like they showed a little bit earlier in the season. Definitely gonna be fun to watch. I love college softball, man. The game's,
it's always a fun atmosphere.
It's a great atmosphere. And here's where I'm at with softball versus baseball from a college standpoint. And I love college baseball, especially when it comes to the later parts of the season, when you get into the conference tournament, when you get into the NCAA tournament and the College World Series. But softball just moves so much faster.
Yeah, it does.
Especially in college with the metal bats in college baseball and how many runs get put up on the board in college baseball. Those games last like 4 hours a pop. And softball games are only 6-7 innings. They move fast. Like it's just a fun. It's a little bit more of a fun type of environment for me. There's a little bit more home runs, I think, in college softball, just because the fences are shorter.
That's what I was going to say, yeah. So they're very short. And I think, shout out to ASU, by the way. I mean, Club Farrington, best atmosphere in college softball. Just put that out there. I mean, the palm trees in the outfield. You got the highway. I gotta say it. I got my ASU backing me here with Shane. So you're basically double teamed here on this one, Damon. I gotta apologize to you.
This is my damn show. I refuse to be taken over on my damn show. Rita, which is what we call our stadium, Rita Hillenbrand Memorial Stadium here in Tucson. It is, I think, for my money, as far as you say you're talking about like scenery, landscape, and stuff. I want to talk about the fans.
Okay, hit me.
Rita Hillenbrand Memorial Stadium is the best West Coast softball fan environment in the country. I'm not really even sure that that's debatable.
Yeah,
I don't think UCLA fans even know that they have a softball team, even though they have, one of the better programs in the country. Their fan base is just so apathetic to every sport. I'm sure Club Farrington is a great environment in terms of being at the stadium, but I don't have the numbers in front of me right now. I'd need to grab them, but I do believe that Hillenbrand has the best attendance of any West Coast softball stadium.
I mean, again, I won't speak to the Rita Stadium part of things because I've never been there before. I've only been to Club Farrington and GCU Stadium. Both stadiums are really pretty though. But I mean, you know what? At least I can give some respect to the Wildcats there on this one, I guess, with the numbers and everything like that. So
don't hate on our softball program. I'll jump this table here. If you are watching over with our streaming partners, head on over to gophnx.com. We'll wrap up the show here as the party continues. So yeah, that's kind of just your overarching little update here on softball and baseball. One other quick note here on softball before we get out of here. Miranda Stoddard is named the Softball America Star of the Week here because this week, guys, I'll read you off these stats. This is nuts. She was 10 of 12 at the plate with 4 walks, had an .833 batting average, 12 RBI, a slugging percentage of 2,500, 6 bombs, a triple, 30 total bases. Wow. 1 week. That was her statistics.
That's some like beginner difficulty road to the show type stuff, right?
It is. Just that's a great comparison. That is a phenomenal comparison. Totally. Like you're on T-ball mode on on road to the show.
Missiles the whole time.
They're meatballs just getting thrown into the strike zone for you there. But yeah, Miranda Stoddard, one of the absolute stars of the country after putting that up. And I believe that I could be wrong, but like she got some other accolades as well. Yeah, she was given the NFCA Player of the Week as well. So picking up some awards there and some accolades for our softball program, and of course they deserve it. With their 10-1 record and their number 9, number 10 overall ranking in the entire country. All right, guys, if you've made it through this far of the show, me talking to myself, me fighting with these, ASU scum devil losers over here behind the Mac. You like I said, made it this far. Please drop a like on this video.
Please do that. It would help us out a lot. But I got to give you credit because I know not a lot of people will be able to kind of sit there and talk it themselves for an hour. So I mean, I'll give you your praise for this time, buddy.
I appreciate it. I've learned much from my my sweet friend Anthony Totri, who did this for an entire football season, as I was reminded yesterday, which is absolutely bonkers.
Yeah.
And So
shout out to Totri
when
too.
you put it into that context, it's almost as if like you can't even complain about having to do it for a week.
Right,
Kevin
exactly.
Visits his family in St. Louis. It's like it is what it is, man. I just gotta get through it. But I appreciate everybody here sticking through it with us and just being locked in on Arizona athletics with us the entire way. Make sure you give me a follow at Damon Dog. That's DAWG. Follow my guy Shane Diefenbach at Shane Dief. That's DIEFF. Rome, where can the people follow you?
You can follow me at RomeJacob1 on Instagram and at RomeKittyTV. One's my personal, one's my broadcast, but please go follow that as well.
Follow his broadcast account. Support the boy's career as he embarks on his Big J journalism career here, and that's why he's in this building, because we do better Big J journalism here at PHNX Sports than 100%. Anywhere in the country. Make sure you guys follow our main account at PHNX_Wildcats. That's going to be the hub for all sorts of content here. We had some pretty fun tweets, I thought, in the last day, especially from our Reggie Geary interview that we had, where Reggie Geary kind of attributed the Arizona backcourt in this team to his 1994 squad with himself, Damon Stoudemire, Khalid Reeves, and just the comparison there between those three guys and Caleb Love, Jaden Bradley, KJ Lewis. So go check out the Twitter account. We got some fun stuff going on over there. And as I said, give me a follow at Damon Dog. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we will catch you next time on a Friday edition at noon on the AZ Wildcats podcast. But until then, have a good one. Peace out, bear down, and go Cats.
We all silly like the mayor.